And joining us now is New York City mayoral candidate Scott Stringer. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's great to be here with you, Lynda. Thanks for having me.
The New York One Ipsos poll just came out this week. It showed that after reports that your campaign was struggling to get some traction, you've actually risen to third place in the polls behind Andrew Yang and Eric Adams. What do you attribute that jump to?
Look, I think momentum is clearly coming our way because I have a real vision for how to open this economy, how we're going to put people back to work, bring New York City back to life. And I've got the skills to do it. I have the experience. I'm ready on day one. And as people start looking at the candidates, I think we will be able to do well. We've built a strong multiracial, intergenerational campaign coalition that rivals no one else. And I'm very confident that we're going forward going to be very competitive.
Also this week, we got the verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial in the George Floyd case. We saw that former officer Chauvin was found guilty on all 3 counts. I wanted to know what your reaction was when you first heard the verdict.
I think it was a verdict in the interest of justice. But look, this is not a time for celebration. We have seen, unfortunately, these cases play out nationally for a very long time and locally in New York City. And it's time now to think about a police department that actually believes in one standard of justice, does not over-police Black and brown communities. I have a public safety plan that would allow the police to do what they should be doing, which is catch dangerous criminals, but also reimagine how we can better respond to calls to 911 that involve mental health experts for mental health issues, for wellness issues and quality of life issues. We cannot have the same department making the same mistakes over and over again. And this terrible national discussion, this terrible tragedy, while we did see justice in the case, we have so much more to do. And the next mayor has to be at the epicenter of this. And I do think we need a mayor who has a real comprehensive plan to keep our kids safe, but also make sure that we meet the needs of safety in our city. And I think I can do both.
We've seen the racial justice protests throughout the year here in New York City. And
if I can, I was out at Barclays last night with so many young people talking and, really wanting very much to see one standard of justice in terms of policing, in terms of economic justice. And I think elected officials have to listen more to what young people are hoping for and what they're demanding. And I think that this case, is also about listening and understanding.
It's been one of the issues that mayoral candidates that has risen this year for mayoral candidates to answer to. But in that same New York One poll that we were talking about, it showed that COVID and the crime levels rising in New York City are actually the 2 big issues for New Yorkers. So do you think you can make police reform a priority?
Well, we have to make police reform a priority, and should have been a priority all along. At the same time, we have to recognize that the clearance rates, meaning the police catching the dangerous shooters and people committing all the crime, the clearance rates are the lowest it's ever been, 26%. So we need to focus police on doing police work, and we need to focus city government on making sure that we have a different response to people who have mental health issues, a different response when it comes to working with our young people. We need more mentors and violence interrupters in communities to work with our children to keep them out of the criminal justice system. Right now, we have a status quo situation in New York City, and other cities are starting to think differently about how we can create a public safety plan. I have a public safety plan I'll put into effect on day one, but this is a conversation that cannot end with the George Floyd verdict. It has to be an ongoing discussion about how to bring justice to our streets and also make sure New Yorkers are safe. There's no way that we can't, that we have to understand that we can do both and we must do both.
And speaking of your plan, the racial justice reckoning that we've been seeing in the nation and here in New York City with the protesters taking to the streets all year has steered the conversation in the way where many New Yorkers are looking for a much more progressive mayoral candidate this year, not the sort of business as usual candidate running for mayor. So do you think that that's what New Yorkers are looking for?
I think people want a progressive mayor. They want someone who's going to do the big things that we need to have happen in our city. We need a mayor who can build real affordable housing. We need a mayor who's going to invest in the education of all our children, not just some. We need a mayor who understands the health disparities that COVID brought to bear and has a plan to address those issues. And no one in this race has my government experience and my progressive agenda that can bring the city back to life, open the economy differently than we closed it. And the proof is the coalition I'm building, the progressive legislators of color who've endorsed my candidacy. The Working Families Party has endorsed my candidacy. The United Federation of Teachers, the teachers of this city who are on the front lines during COVID, are supporting my candidacy. And that speaks to my record, both as a legislator, both as a former borough president, and now as the city's chief financial officer. They know I have the experience that I can walk in on day one to City Hall and move forward a progressive agenda that will bring our city back to where it has to be pre-COVID and beyond.
And speaking of your endorsement from UFT, the United Federation of Teachers, you know, many New Yorkers did not agree with the teachers union when it came to how the COVID pandemic was handled, when it came to closing schools and reopening schools. What do you say to parents who want to know, can you work with the teachers union, but can you also stand up to them if needed?
Look, I'm known as one of the most independent elected officials in the city in the last 30 years. So nobody controls me. I answer to the people of this city who've elected me time and time again to citywide office. But I'm proud to have the endorsement of our teachers. They are frontline workers. Many of them lost their lives to COVID. And look, I'm a public school parent. My kids are in the system, a third grader and a second grader. I know the work that the teachers have done with my own children. And I know that part of this problem is the Department of Education has been dysfunctional, always last to letting parents know what's going on, failing to listen to the legitimate concerns of parents. So I understand the frustration of parents and teachers. And I think, given my skills, my actual experience as a parent day to day in the public school system, nobody has more experience on these issues than I do. And I've been working on a plan to make sure we open our schools safely. I've been working with the stakeholders, including teachers, to make sure we get to where we have to be. And that is going to be my promise to every single parent. We have got to open up this city. And the first thing we have to do is make sure our kids will get the tutoring services they need, the mental health services they need. Look, my kids have gone through a very tough year, but their mom and dad have a certain amount of privilege that can deal with these issues. I worry about the kids in homeless shelters and the kids in public housing who didn't have remote learning devices or didn't have internet access. The next mayor's got to level the playing field for these children, and I can't wait to get started fighting for every one of our kids.
And as the school year stands right now, we're not even 100% sure that kids will be in school full time when the school year rolls around next fall. If you were mayor right now, what would you be doing as far as planning for the schools?
I would be planning to open our schools. I would be working with stakeholders, our principals, our teachers, our administrators. I'd be holding the Department of Education accountable, making sure that they're actually coming up with specific plans with the mayor so that we can bring our kids back, and we bring our kids back safely and our teachers back safely. But this is about planning and about expertise and about actually waking up every day and doing the best job we can. Part of the problem with this administration and this Department of Education is they didn't know what was what during the pandemic, and they didn't plan to give parents what they really need to understand, which is certainty. If you have a job, a frontline job, and you're out there trying to feed your family, take care of your kids, when the DOE can't tell you what's happening and the mayor can't tell you what's happening, that means nothing's happening. And when I'm mayor, that is never going to be the discussion I have with the parents of this city. And I hope that we understand that the first thing we have to do is build out a mental health initiative for our kids. We have to make up for learning loss. This is going to be an epic moment for education of our children. Think about how many kids, with what they've gone through, how do we bring them back? And how do we bring them back so that they don't lose their hopes and aspirations for their own lives? And I feel it every day with my third grader and second grader. I look at this recovery through their eyes, but I also know as mayor, I'm responsible for all the children of this city.
And you were mentioning that goes hand in hand with reopening the city, the economy of the city. There's been so much devastation when it comes to the economic situation of so many New Yorkers. What's job one for a Mayor Stringer as far as helping those who have been most hit economically hard by this pandemic?
We've got to bring this city back, and we've got to instill a sense of excitement that says New York will never go under. We're going to build the city back bigger than it was. And to do that, we're going to prioritize reopening our small businesses, giving them the economic assistance that they need to restock the shelves, rehire workers, get back in business. We still have a huge job in terms of vaccination and inoculation in all of our communities. That should be number one. We have to break through the bureaucratic nightmares that have limited people getting the vaccination. I've offered a plan to expedite that, and the mayor has listened to a lot of my ideas. But look, long term, we cannot open this economy the same way we closed it. We have to remember that the Wall Street executives in this town made $50 billion during the pandemic. And the people who have our small businesses, run our small businesses, many went under. And the next mayor has to focus the recovery on the middle class, the working poor, the people who sacrificed so much during this recovery. But when you look at my small business plan, it's real. When you look at the way I want to reimagine this city, it's about centering our arts and culture in all of our communities, to build out a 5-borough transportation system, to make open streets permanent because it worked for our restaurants and it will work for retail. I want our kids to be able to go out and swim in the middle of a street. And that means we need to create more pools and activity for them. So I'm good to go if the voters will have me. These are very serious issues. We cannot get this wrong, and we don't need a mayor or can afford a mayor on training wheels who has no experience working in government, understanding that we have to navigate Washington, Albany, and City Hall.